And by week 3, the leaves were curling, the soil was bone dry by noon, and I genuinely thought I'd just picked a bad plant. That's what I told myself. Bad plant, bad luck, maybe bad seeds. It wasn't the plant. It wasn't luck. It was the pot. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're starting out. You can do almost everything right. Good soil, good sun, watering on schedule, and still lose the harvest. Because of one decision you made before you even planted the seed. And it's not the only one. There are 9 more just like it, quietly working against you the entire season, and most of them are invisible until it's too late to fix that year's harvest. So let's go through them one at a time, starting with the one that trips up almost everyone first. Mistake number 1, the container size trap. Most people pick a container based on what looks proportional. A little plant goes in a little pot. It feels right. It looks tidy on the patio. And then the plant stalls. And nobody thinks to blame the pot, because the pot looks fine. Here's what's actually happening underground where you can't see it. Roots don't just anchor the plant. They're the plant's entire life support system. When roots hit the wall of a container, they don't stop needing space. They just start competing with themselves, wrapping in circles, choking off their own growth. The plant above the soil starts showing you the symptoms. Stunted growth, wilting even after watering, leaves that never quite get to full size. But the actual problem is a couple inches underground where you never look. Tomatoes, especially the indeterminate types that keep growing all season, need real room. We're talking a minimum of 10 gallons, and closer to 15 if you want a plant that can actually support a full harvest instead of just surviving. Peppers can get away with a bit less, somewhere around 5 to 10 gallons, depending on the variety. Cucumbers land in that same range, but they'll punish a small container fast, because they're thirsty, aggressive growers. And look, I get it. If you've only got a balcony, buying a 15-gallon grow bag feels excessive for one plant. But here's the actual math. One tomato plant in the right size container will outproduce 3 tomato plants crammed into containers that are too small. You're not saving space by going smaller. You're just guaranteeing a smaller harvest across the board. Quick gut check. If your container is under 5 gallons and you're trying to grow anything beyond herbs or lettuce, that's mistake number 1, and it's worth fixing before you plant anything else this season. Mistake number 2, ignoring how fast containers dry out. Now here's where it gets sneaky. Because this mistake often shows up wearing a disguise. You did the container size right. Good, but now your plant's still wilting by afternoon, and you're standing there confused because you watered it that morning. Ground soil holds moisture and slowly releases it over days. Container soil doesn't have that luxury. It's surrounded on all sides by air and often full sun, which means it can lose moisture 2, sometimes 3 times faster than the same plant would in the ground. Add a hot patio or a south-facing balcony into the mix, and a container that felt properly watered at 8 a.m. can be nearly dry by 2 p.m. This is why watering on a schedule like every other day, no matter what, actually fails a lot of new container gardeners. The soil doesn't care about your schedule. It cares about heat, wind, container material, and how root-bound the plant already is. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple, but very few beginners actually do it. Stick a finger 2 inches into the soil before you water. Every single time. No schedule required. If it's dry at that depth, water. If it's still damp, wait. Dark-colored plastic pots heat up fast in direct sun and dry out quicker than lighter-colored or unglazed containers. So if you're using black plastic grow bags in full sun, expect to check more often, not less. I'll come back to this one in a minute actually, because drying out too fast connects directly to something most people get wrong with soil. Mistake number 3. Picking low-yield crops for a small space. If you've only got room for a handful of containers, every single one needs to be earning its space. And this is where a lot of beginners quietly sabotage themselves without realizing it. They grow what they like the idea of, not what actually produces. Tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers earn their spot because they keep giving all season if you treat them right. One tomato plant, properly sized and cared for, can produce dozens of pounds of fruit over a summer. Compare that to a single container growing something that gives you one small harvest and calls it done. In a small space, that's a bad trade. This doesn't mean you can't grow anything else. It means your limited containers, the ones getting your best sun and your best soil, should go to the plants that pay you back the most for the space they take up. Mistake number 4. Growing outward instead of up. Here's a mistake that's really just a missed opportunity. A lot of beginners treat container gardening like they're working with unlimited ground space, letting cucumber vines sprawl across the patio, or tomato branches flop over the edge of the pot. Vertical growing solves 2 problems at once. It keeps sprawling plants like cucumbers and vining tomato varieties supported and healthier, because a plant lying on wet soil is much more likely to develop rot and disease, and it frees up ground space for another container entirely. You don't need anything expensive here. A simple trellis, even a scrap piece of wood with some twine strung across it, gives climbing plants somewhere to go besides sideways. If you've got the vertical space and you're not using it, you're leaving harvest on the table, plain and simple. Mistake number 5. Using the wrong soil. This is where I want to circle back to the drying out problem from earlier, because soil is a huge part of it. Regular garden soil or dirt from your yard is dense. It compacts inside a container, which means water either pools on top and runs straight off, or it saturates and suffocates the roots. There's rarely an in-between. Container plants need a soil that's light enough to drain properly, but still holds enough moisture to get the plant through the day. A good potting mix, blended with compost for nutrients and something like worm castings to feed the soil biology, gives you both drainage and moisture retention at the same time. This one fix alone reduces a huge chunk of the drying out problem from mistake number 2, because the right soil structure holds water more evenly instead of losing it all at once. If you've ever wondered why the exact same watering routine works for one gardener and fails for another, soil composition is very often the hidden variable. Mistake number 6. Watering and fertilizing on the wrong rhythm. Every time you water a container, you're not just hydrating the plant. You're also slowly washing nutrients straight out through the drainage holes. This happens in the ground too, but nowhere near as fast, because ground soil has more volume and more surrounding soil to buffer nutrient loss. That means container plants need to be fed more consistently than most beginners expect. A slow-release fertilizer worked into the soil monthly, combined with a liquid feed every 1 to 2 weeks during active growth, keeps tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers, all heavy feeders, actually fueled through the season instead of running on empty by midsummer. Most people either forget this step completely, or feed once at planting time and call it done, and then they wonder, 3 months in, why the plant that looked amazing in June is producing almost nothing by August. Mistake number 7. Planting everything at once, then stopping. Here's a mistake that's less about what you do and more about what you don't do. Most beginners plant their containers in spring, harvest through summer, and then just stop. The container sits there half empty for the rest of the season. Succession planting means starting new seedlings while your current plants are still producing. So the moment one plant is finished, something else is already ready to take its place. It sounds like more work, but it's really just a shift in timing. Start a new seedling indoors a few weeks before an existing plant winds down, and your containers stay productive instead of sitting empty for months. Mistake number 8. Not harvesting enough. This one surprises people every time I bring it up, because it feels backwards. But under-harvesting is genuinely a mistake, not a virtue. Plants like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers are biologically wired to keep producing as long as they're being harvested. It signals the plant to keep putting energy into more fruit. Leave mature vegetables sitting on the plant too long, and the plant slows down, redirecting energy into the fruit that's already there, instead of starting new growth. If you've got vegetables sitting there looking picture perfect, and you're hesitant to pick them because the container looks so full and healthy right now, that hesitation is actually working against your total harvest for the season. Mistake number 9. Underestimating sunlight and airflow. Most fruiting vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, all 3 of our anchor crops here, need 6 to 8 hours of direct sun. And container plants actually need slightly more light than the same variety planted in the ground, because they're working with a smaller root system, generating the plant's energy. Airflow matters just as much and gets ignored even more. Containers crowded too close together trap humidity around the leaves, which is exactly the environment fungal diseases love. Leaving a little breathing room between containers, even just a few inches, dramatically cuts down on those problems later in the season. Mistake number 10. Treating every season the same way. And here's the last one, and it ties everything else together. A lot of beginners set their container garden up once in spring, and then leave it running on autopilot all season. Same watering, same feeding, same expectations, whether it's a mild June or a brutal August heat wave. But containers respond to changing conditions faster than ground soil does, in both directions, good and bad. That means the routine that worked perfectly in spring often needs adjusting by midsummer, whether that's more frequent watering, extra shade during a heat wave, or an adjusted feeding schedule as the plant shifts from establishing itself to actively fruiting. Treating your container garden as something that needs small adjustments through the season, instead of a set-it-and-forget-it system, is really the mistake underneath all the other 9. So, here's where that leaves us. 10 mistakes, and if I'm honest, almost every one of them traces back to that very first moment, picking a container that was too small, without realizing everything else downstream that decision affects. If you fix just one thing after watching this, make it the container size. Everything else on this list gets easier once the roots actually have room to do their job. Next time, I want to get specific about exactly what too small actually looks like for tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers side by side, because the difference is bigger than most people expect, and I think it's going to change how you plan out your containers for next season. If you've hit one of these 10 mistakes yourself, drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious which one gets the most people, and it might just become the next video. If this helped, a like goes a long way, and if you want more of this, go ahead and subscribe.